May 1910. The streets of London are draped in the imperial purple of mourning, yet the spectacle is one of blinding majesty. 9 reigning kings ride horseback in the funeral procession of Edward VII, the Peacemaker. It is the single greatest gathering of European royalty in history, a snapshot of the old world order at its absolute zenith. To the cheering crowds, this brotherhood of monarchs represents stability, a familial bond that surely precludes the madness of total war. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany rides alongside King George V of Britain, cousins united in grief. Yet this photograph of the 9 kings is a deception. It is a masquerade masking a continent that has already rigged itself for demolition. Beneath the gold braid and the plumed helmets lies a festering web of secret treaties and military obligations that have turned Europe into a locked room filled with gunpowder. These men, sitting so regally in their saddles, are not the masters of their destiny. They are merely the sleepwalkers, unwittingly marching toward a cliff edge that will swallow their dynasties whole. The peace is a lie. The fuse was lit long before the coffin was lowered.
To understand the trap, we must rewind to the architect who built the machine, Otto von Bismarck. For decades, the Iron Chancellor of Germany juggled 5 glass balls in the air, terrified that dropping one would shatter the German Empire. His nightmare was the Cauchemar des Coalitions, the nightmare of coalitions. He knew that a Central European power could not survive a war on 2 fronts. His solution was a masterpiece of diplomatic duplicity: keep France isolated, keep Russia close, and never let the 2 meet. But in 1890, the young, arrogant Kaiser Wilhelm II dismissed the old pilot. Wilhelm wanted a place in the sun, not a shadow diplomacy. He let the reinsurance treaty with Russia lapse, believing that the czars of the East would never ally with the Republic of the West. It was a fatal miscalculation. Almost immediately, the impossible happened. Republican France and autocratic Russia, possessing nothing in common but a shared fear of Berlin, embraced. The Nutcracker was formed. Germany was now surrounded, and the paranoia that would drive the next 20 years of policy took root in the halls of the Reichstag.
In response to this encirclement, Germany chained itself to a corpse. The dual alliance with Austria-Hungary was intended to be a shield, a bulwark of Germanic power in the center of the continent. But the Austria-Hungarian Empire was not a rising star. It was a crumbling mosaic of ethnic tensions, held together by the aging Emperor Franz Joseph and a bureaucracy of denial. By tying Berlin's fate to Vienna, Germany inherited every problem of the Balkans. If a Serb sneezed in Sarajevo, Berlin would catch a cold. This alliance was not based on strength, but on mutual desperation. The Germans felt they had no other friends. The Austrians knew they could not survive without German bayonets. This dependency created a dangerous dynamic, the blank check mentality. Germany felt compelled to support Austria in any reckless adventure to prove its loyalty, while Austria felt emboldened to take risks it could never afford, assuming Big Brother in Berlin would clean up the mess. They were 2 drowning men clutching each other, dragging themselves deeper into the abyss. Across the English Channel, the British Empire sat in splendid isolation, relying on the Royal Navy to maintain its global hegemony. But the world was changing. The Boer War had exposed Britain's military vulnerabilities and diplomatic loneliness. Germany's decision to build a high-seas fleet was the final straw. It was a direct challenge to Britain's command of the oceans. Britain needed friends, and it found them in unlikely places. First came the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904. Technically, it was not a military alliance, merely a resolution of colonial disputes in Africa. But in the language of diplomacy, it was a tectonic shift. Then, in 1907, came the agreement with Russia. The Triple Entente was born: Britain, France, and Russia. It was a loose collection of agreements, lacking the ironclad obligations of the German-Austrian Pact. But to Berlin, it felt like a hangman's noose. The encirclement was complete. Europe was now divided into 2 armed camps, staring at one another across a widening chasm of suspicion.
The rigidity of these alliances was tested in Morocco twice. In 1905 and again in 1911, Kaiser Wilhelm attempted to break the Anglo-French friendship by manufacturing a crisis. He sailed to Tangier, riding a white horse through the streets, declaring support for the Sultan against French influence. It was theater intended to panic Paris and make London reconsider its commitments. In 1911, he sent the gunboat Panther to Agadir, a provocative metal fist aimed at French colonial ambition. But the plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of driving a wedge between Britain and France, the bullying tactics welded them together. British politicians, previously hesitant, began to see Germany not just as a rival, but as an existential threat. Secret military conversations began between the British and French general staffs. They discussed logistics, train schedules, and harbor capacities. Without a single vote in Parliament, the moral obligation to fight alongside France was being written in invisible ink. The diplomatic trap was setting its jaws.
While diplomats whispered, the factories roared. The alliance systems fueled the most expensive arms race in human history. It was the era of the dreadnought. When Britain launched this revolutionary battleship in 1906, it rendered all previous navies obsolete overnight, including its own. Germany saw a window of opportunity and began building frantically to catch up. A naval race is a terrifying economic engine. Once started, it cannot be stopped without loss of face. National pride became measured in tonnage and caliber. In Russia, the Great Program aimed to rebuild the army shattered by Japan. In France, the 3-year law extended conscription to match German manpower. Every nation was stockpiling cordite and steel, convinced that being prepared for war was the only way to ensure peace. They did not realize that by loading the gun, they were making the temptation to pull the trigger irresistible. The military staffs began to dictate policy. Mobilization timetables became rigid, mathematical gods that could not be defied.
The spark would not come from the North Sea or the Rhine, but from the powder keg of Europe, the Balkans. As the Ottoman Empire receded like a dying tide, it left behind a chaotic shoreline of aggressive new nationalisms. Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro fought the Turks, then fought each other, all while eyeing the territories held by Austria-Hungary. In 1908, Austria formally annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, a province filled with ethnic Serbs. It was a diplomatic humiliation for Russia and a call to arms for Serbian nationalists. Europe teetered on the brink of war then, but Russia blinked, too weak to fight. The lesson Berlin and Vienna learned was dangerous. If you threaten war, the other side will back down. This brinksmanship became their standard operating procedure. But a bluff only works until your opponent decides to call it. By 1914, Russia had rebuilt its strength and swore it would never suffer another 1908. The next crisis would not end in a handshake. It would end in fire.
June 28, 1914, Sarajevo. The story is well known. The wrong turn, the stalled car, the 2 shots from Gavrilo Princip's pistol. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austrian throne, is dead. In any other century, this would have been a regional tragedy, a police matter, perhaps a small punitive war. But because of the diplomatic trap, those 2 bullets shattered the spinal cord of the world. Vienna saw the assassination not as a crime, but as a golden opportunity to crush Serbia forever. They drafted an ultimatum designed to be rejected. But before sending it, they turned to Berlin. "Will you back us?" they asked. The Kaiser, distracted and overconfident, issued the infamous blank check. Germany would stand by Austria, no matter what. He left for a sailing holiday, assuming the conflict would remain local. He was wrong. The machinery of the alliances, silent for so long, began to hum with a terrifying mechanical life of its own.
The July crisis was a slow-motion car crash played out via telegram. When Austria declared war on Serbia on July 28th, the dominoes began to fall with mathematical precision. Russia, the protector of the Slavs, could not stand aside again. Tsar Nicholas ordered partial mobilization, hoping to scare Austria without provoking Germany. But in the era of mass armies and railways, partial mobilization was impossible. It was all or nothing. Germany, seeing the Russian giant stirring, felt the walls closing in. Their war plan, the Schlieffen Plan, dictated that they must knock out France before Russia could fully mobilize. Speed was their only survival strategy. So, because Russia mobilized against Austria, Germany declared war on Russia. And because Germany declared war on Russia, France prepared to honor her treaty. The diplomats tried to pull the brakes, but the generals had locked the controls. The treaties, designed to keep the peace through deterrence, were now dragging the entire continent into the fire.
The final tumbler in the lock was Britain. Berlin gambled that London would stay neutral. After all, what was Serbia to an Englishman? But the German war plan required marching through neutral Belgium to reach Paris. Belgium's neutrality was guaranteed by an 1839 treaty signed by all major powers, a scrap of paper, as the German chancellor bitterly called it. But for Britain, that scrap of paper was a matter of national honor and strategic necessity. They could not allow a hostile power to control the Belgian coast. On August 4th, when German boots crossed the Belgian border, the trap snapped shut on the final victim. Britain declared war. In a matter of days, a dispute in the Balkans had activated a Rube Goldberg machine of death, dragging in empires that spanned the globe. From the Raj in India to the dominions of Canada and Australia, the world was at war. The lamps were going out all over Europe. We would not see them lit again in our lifetime.
We look back at the summer of 1914 with a sense of superior horror. We see a generation of leaders who were criminally negligent, bound by secret treaties and rigid logic to destroy their own civilization. We see the stupidity of the blank check and the arrogance of the short war illusion. But pause for a moment. Look at the map of the world today. Look at the webs of alliance that span the globe: NATO, Article 5, mutual defense pacts in the Pacific. We have built a security architecture almost identical to the one that failed in 1914. Only now, the weapons are not artillery shells, but city killers. We rely on the same logic of deterrence, that an attack on one is an attack on all. It is a system designed to prevent war, just as the alliances of 1914 were. But systems are only as stable as the people who run them. The 9 kings of 1910 sleep in their graves, but their ghosts are watching us. They are whispering a warning from the silence of the trenches. Paper treaties cannot stop lead bullets, and when the dominoes are nuclear, there is no time to stop the machine once it begins to turn.